our series on shame. And what we've done, if you haven't been here, is in my mind, shame is one of the most important topics to discuss with people that come out of childhood trauma. It is something that happens subconsciously that they don't even realize and often aren't aware of, but it's a core belief that they develop that basically says the reason I am being neglected or abused or I've been abandoned and my needs aren't being met consistently is it must be my fault. Something is wrong with me. I must not be lovable. I must not have any value. And that core belief, once it takes root and shape within the person, begins to affect everything they do. And when they go to get into a relationship in the future, it makes a healthy relationship impossible. And so we spent 3 weeks trying to identify what shame is, help you understand it, help you begin to see it in your life. And I hope that you've been able to do that. So what I decided to do tonight was to give you a test. And you don't know it, but on that sheet that you were given, you're going to find not the normal PowerPoint, but you're going to find a test. So the question that I get asked all the time is if shame happens at a self-conscious level, I didn't become aware that I had shame as my core identity until I started coming here. How can I tell how my shame is showing itself? How can I tell how my shame has worked itself out in my life? So this test is 42 characteristics of shame. And I might add a few extra to throw in for free as we go through it together. But here's what I want you to do. If you have a courage and you don't mind people looking over your shoulder to see what you wrote down, but I want you to, on a scale of 1 to 10, rate yourself on each question. So we're going to go through 42. So 1 means that's not really an issue at all. 10 means this is a massive issue. So you can rate yourself on each question, and then at the end we're going to tabulate just kind of how big shame is an issue for you. And the second thing that you can do, and this is optional as well, but you might want to do scale of 1 to 10, what I was like a year ago, and a scale of 1 to 10 of what I'm like today in each of those areas, and see if there's been any growth in those areas in your life. So I'm going to read them out as we go, and you can do the marking down and grade yourself. I will explain some of them as we go to make sure everybody understands. So are you ready? Number 1, have a rigid core belief like I'm bad, I'm weak, I'm unlovable, undeserving, inept, unattractive, stupid, powerless, worthless person. Any of those, rate the intensity of that belief in your life. Okay? Second one, excessively zealous, defensive, rigid, dogmatic. So a couple things with that. If somebody says something to you, how quickly do you become defensive about stuff? How quickly do you take things personally and then get defensive? That's part of that. Secondly, is how much are you, it's rigid in your thinking. You only want to look at things one way. Don't mess with my thinking. I don't want to see any other point of view. It's my way or the highway. And you have that very rigid type of thinking inside of you. Or the third part of that is you like to take on projects. And you go 100 miles an hour with great zeal on your latest project till you get bored. Then you jump to the next project with great zeal and go on like that. So that's all included in number 2. Number 3, habitual self-centeredness and egotism. Now, it's easy to think that a self-centered person's got a big ego and is bragging all the time. What I do to help people with that is I say, you can be very self-centered and never talk about yourself, but if there was a group photo taken and somebody showed you the group photo, who would you look for first? Yourself. That's what that self-preoccupation, that self-centeredness is about. Number 4, constant belittling discounting, criticizing yourself and or others. So your negative thought world is predominant. It's kind of your default. Number 5, repeatedly choosing menial jobs below your personal capabilities. Or the other part of that is you avoid responsibilities excessively. So the word commitment scares you to death because that makes you have to be responsible. And you don't want to have to get locked into that. Okay, number 6, some of you are nudging each other already. Having one or more active addictions to substances, including fat, sugar, carbohydrates, activities like work, spending, gambling, pornography, working out, certain relationship, codependency, emotional states like excitement, rage, anger, spiritual ecstasy, sexual arousal, or sexual release. That's number 6. Some of you are putting 15 instead of 10 on some of these, and I get that. Compulsion, number 7, to rescue needy or disadvantaged people, championing and identifying with the underdogs. So you're always rescuing people. We've talked about that a lot. Number 8, habitually avoiding eye contact or being apologetic that you don't look at people in the eye, or being defensive if somebody challenges you that you don't look them in the eye. Number 9, excessive social isolation or a compulsion to socialize. So some of these questions are going to go to the two ends of the spectrum, the two extremes. So the one is isolate from all social. The other is I can't stop being in a social environment and I have to be charming and the center of attention. Number 10, having few or no real friends. Now, we're not talking about superficial, casual friends. We're talking about real friends, or being consistently drawn to other unrecovered, wounded, needy companions and partners. So who are you attracted to if you are attracted to people? 11, a general suspicion and mistrust of other people, even or especially when they're trying to be nice. You suspect some hidden motive. Number 12, excessive sensitivity and defensiveness to perceived criticism, not necessarily real criticism, and perceived rejection. So being very sensitive to whether people are criticizing you or rejecting you. 13, excessive concern with personal or social blame and fault finding. So preoccupied with blame of yourself, of society, finding fault with yourself, with society. 14, often misperceiving neutral feedback as being criticism and or wrongly assuming unspoken criticism. 15, feeling irrationally guilty. So you're feeling guilty, but you haven't done anything wrong. Or getting anxious about earned successes. So this is known as the imposter syndrome, where you feel like you're being a fraud or a phony when you're recognized for an accomplishment. 16, obsessing about my rights or I don't deserve anything. Two ends of the spectrum. Or obsessing about equality and fairness all the time as being one of your real hot buttons. 17, endlessly focusing on past mistakes that you made in public or in private. Number 18, habitually putting your own opinions, needs, and welfare last versus seeing you as equal to other people. 19, having an unreasonable fear of failing, losing, or making mistakes. 20, never admitting mistakes or compulsively apologizing all the time. So we're almost halfway done. So if you're starting to see maybe you have some shame, good, that was the purpose of this test. 21, habitually unflattering, inappropriate, and or sloppy clothing, grooming, or hygiene. In other words, you dress like a tramp because you feel like a tramp. Obsessive, 22, obsessive concern with personal, professional, social, vehicle, or dwelling appearances. The other extreme, preoccupied with how you look and how everything that you own looks. Image. 23, compulsive perfectionism and explaining to your friends or justifying to your friends, I just can't help it, and are driven with a need to win. 24, rarely buying anything nice or special for oneself or taking fun trips or vacations because you feel you're not worth it, you don't deserve it, or it would be a waste of good money to waste it on yourself. 25, compulsively shading the truth, lying directly or by omission, so you don't say what, you just say 95% of what you did today, you admit the 5% you don't want them to know. That's a form of lying. Denying it to avoid expected ridicule, criticism, or disapproval. Also a symptom of lots of fear. So the need to lie because you're afraid of how others will react if they knew the truth. 26, notable self-neglect. Examples, resisting or avoiding appropriate medical care. Afraid to go to the doctor because you're afraid of what you might find out. Okay, rarely or never seeing a doctor, a dentist, gynecologist, eye specialist for checkups or illnesses, not getting or taking medications that are prescribed, poor personal hygiene. 27, avoiding self-assessment for psychological wounds and or true personal recovery. Living by the thing that says, that's in the past, I'm not going to look at it. It doesn't affect me now. I refuse to look at how any of that might have affected me. Avoidance of looking at that stuff that might be painful. 28, choosing unhealthy diets or habits, including smoking, lack of exercise, and or putting yourself into toxic environments, ignoring, deflecting, minimizing, explaining, analyzing, or joking about this. So you go, yeah, I got lots of unhealthy habits. Yeah, I go out with unhealthy people. I hang around, and then you make a joke about why it's not a big deal. 29, deflecting, discounting, and or rejecting deserved compliments, being very hard on yourself. So if people give you a compliment, you have some way of deflecting it so you don't absorb it. Number 30, chronically giving time and energy to others and getting little or nothing in return. So you give more than you get as your normal in relationships. Number 31, repeatedly choosing, justifying, and tolerating relationships, situations, and environments which promote or produce shame in you. So letting yourself stay in a relationship where it feeds into your shame, letting yourself being in environments that cause you greater shame and doing nothing about it. 32, being unable to do this exercise. Going, this is stupid. Okay, some of you just put 10 by that one. 33. You didn't know that we would sneak that one in there. Repeatedly taking risks that result in self-harm, humiliation, and or loss of self and social respect. Denying or justifying an active addiction is a common example. So you're not purposely killing yourself, but you're flirting with all kinds of dangerous stuff and somehow justifying it to yourself and others. 34, rarely requesting or demanding what you want, or doing so anxiously and expecting rejection rather than calmly asserting what you need. So to ask for help, to express a need or desire, causes anxiety in you, and you resist doing that. 35, tolerating and or justifying a core belief like, I don't deserve or expect success, love, security, comfort, friends, or nice things. Or another way to say that is, I think the best I'll do is to get a few crumbs of love, and I'm okay with that. 36, we're almost done if you're sweating. Being timid, passive, quiet, reserved, or aggressive, self-centered, and a bully. Two ends of that extreme. 37, not setting or enforcing holistically healthy limits or boundaries with oneself and others. So you're not good at setting boundaries. You're not good at making rules for yourself and then following those rules. You're great at making rules, it's just following them. That's the problem. 38, self-sabotage, repeatedly setting yourself up for failure, disappointment, frustration, losses, and feeling or saying, I can't help it, it doesn't matter, I don't care, I don't deserve it. So you sabotage all the good things that are happening in your life. 39, frequently choosing long-suffering victim, saint, or martyr roles in key relationships and social settings and not questioning why. In other words, if you start looking at your relationships, you begin to realize, why am I always the victim? And why am I always the one that's making all of the sacrifices? And then you never question yourself. You just keep repeating that cycle, relationship after relationship. 40, choosing a direct contact human service profession like clergy, being a pastor, counseling, medicine, being a doctor, education, being a teacher, law enforcement, being a cop or probation or corrections, consulting, coaching, training, driving public vehicles, customer service, casework. So you always need to be in a helping role. 41, shame, anxiety. The fear of feeling shame. So not only do you know you have shame, you're afraid when you go to different situations that your shame might get triggered. And that causes you anxiety. And 42, frequently reliving traumatic memories from the past that cause shame. How did you do? So here's now what I want you to do. Go through and count the number that you have a score of 7 or higher. And see how many of the 42 you end up with a score of 7 or higher. I just did this with the clients at React a couple weeks ago, and we didn't do all 42. We just did 38 of them. And most of them had more than 30 that were 7 and above. So see what you have, and if you're in that category, you better sign up for React. Okay, now I want to tell you this. Next week and the week after are going to be the final 2 weeks on shame, and it's all going to be positive. It's going to be healing shame, okay? This is the last heavy night, and this is the last night where you get a punch in the face about this is an issue. Pay attention. Start to work on it, because this is a big problem, and maybe now you're beginning to see that. So with that, you can take that home. You can think about it, talk about it, get an application for React over there if you want. But I want to take you to the next piece with this, which I think is super important to understand. And it goes like this. Shame is a core belief, but what I want you to understand is all the beliefs that shame develops are lies. So a big part of dealing with shame is understanding the lies that you have believed that are part of shame. So the obvious ones we've talked about, I'm not good enough, I'm less than, I'm not lovable, I'm not valuable, I'm inferior, I'm a bad. So we've talked about those. Now what I want you to do is think with me a little bit further into other more subtle lies that come out of shame, but then that your brain has developed systems to protect those lies from ever changing. So let me give you this. We've talked about the house of mirrors. So if you went into the Red River X with the distorted mirrors and you're 6 feet tall and thin, but you look in the mirror and you're 4 feet tall and 4 feet wide, that's a distorted mirror. That mirror is lying to you. But if you grew up in a family where you only had one mirror and it was distorted, and that's the mirror you looked at every day, and it was mom and dad, what they said, how they treated you, and you believed that you were 4 feet tall and 4 feet wide, and then in your teens you went for the first time to a friend's house where they had an accurate mirror, and you looked in it and you were 6 feet tall and you were thin, you would say something's wrong with that mirror. So what I want you to understand is you believe the lie of the distorted mirror as if it's the truth, but you built a layer of protection around that so that now when you see an accurate mirror, something kicks in and says that's not right, and you discount it. You don't allow it to penetrate the lies. So what would happen if somebody came up to you and say, I see so much growth in you, I see potential, I see great qualities in you? A lot of you would go, they wouldn't say that if they really knew me. So you just have a system right there where you just discounted any chance to change the lie that I'm not good enough. Or you might say, I wonder what they want. They must have some hidden agenda here. They're trying to get something from me. That's why they're buttering me up. And you would discount what they say through all kinds of different things. So the point I want you to see is this. When you come to deal with shame, you're confronting lies, but it's not easy to confront those lies. There are systems in place to keep you hanging on to the lies as if they're the truth. So we're going to come at the very end of tonight to how we begin to change that. But I want you to think about some of the extra lies that come out of shame. So some of you feel that you're a phony. And what makes that difficult is there's a part of you that has been a phony. You've worn masks. But you want to believe that all of you is phony. And that's part of a lie. Some of you have been trained to believe I am selfish. If I ever express a need or stand up for myself or take care of myself, I am being selfish. And you go there very quickly. Some of you have the lie that you are ugly. And that is part of your shame lie. Some it goes even deeper. And they at some level, probably not even at a conscious level, believe I shouldn't have been born. And you may have heard things like that growing up, and you've bought into that. Or with that, I don't deserve a good life. And that is one of the reasons why people sabotage when good things start to happen, because deep, deep down, they don't believe they deserve it. Another lie that subtly comes out of all of this is, I figure because I'm such a screw up, I will eventually fail at everything in my life. Therefore, I might as well mess it up now. And that's part of the sabotage. But I want you to see the subtlety of that shame lie is, I'm pretty sure I'll fail at everything. So I might as well get it over with. Next one. And this now goes into a street level of thinking, but it's how shame distorts respect. So if you criticize me in any way, you are rejecting me. Or you think I'm worse than you. If you question my ideas, you think I'm stupid. So what does it mean to show respect on a street level? You have to agree with me about everything I say. You can never challenge me. You can never criticize me. If you do, you're disrespecting me. If you ever offered me advice or challenge something that I've said and offer me a better solution, you're disrespecting me. That is shame. And shame is believing the only way I can believe I have value is if everybody around me are yes men. They agree with everything I do, never confront me, never hold me accountable. If they do, then they are disrespecting me. Next one, and this is a very subtle one too. People who are nice to me are probably saying bad things behind my back. Some of you may deep down believe that. Next one, deep down, I think that everyone I get close to will eventually abandon me. Maybe not right away, but eventually they will. Next one, I will sometimes abandon people because I'm pretty sure they abandon me. This can happen at a self-conscious or subconscious level where if you feel relationship tension or distance growing, you may begin, without even realizing it, start sabotaging the relationship and abandoning the other person before they abandon you. And that is part of the shame lie and how it works out. Next one, if I spend time relaxing or doing something that interests me, I am being selfish. So some of you were raised that in such a way that if you relax, you feel guilty. If you take an afternoon off just to do stuff you enjoy, you are being selfish and you feel guilty for that. Next one, very subtle. No one will ever love me unconditionally. People may love me, but there's usually always a string attached somewhere. And that comes out of shame. And so you're suspicious of all love and can't allow yourself to receive it because you can't believe it would ever be genuine. Next one, I should be happy with a relationship that gives me a few crumbs of love. That's probably the best I can get. Again, shame working itself out. Okay, so those are just some of the lies that come out of shame. And what I want you to understand is you may have been operating by those lies without even realizing it. And so the whole point of what this exercise tonight has been is you can't change something till you become aware of it. But with shame, most of it operates at a subconscious level. So I can't deal with shame until I grow in self-awareness about how shame has affected me and how it works out in all kinds of subtle ways. So I'm not doing this to discourage you, to make you feel overwhelmed with how screwed up you are, though you might be feeling that. I am doing this so you become aware of all the subtle intricacies of shame in your life. Because only as you are aware can you begin to change those lies and replace them with the truth. Now, this is one part of healing from shame. There is an intellectual part to healing from shame. So the first thing that I want people to get is there's an intellectual component, there's a relationship component, there's a physical component, there's a spiritual component, emotional component. Everything affects shame, but intellectual is one part, okay? But it's not the only part. So a lot of people go around and say, I just need to tell myself the truth. And I say, good. But if that's the only thing you do, it probably won't be enough. After a while, you'll stop doing it because you won't believe those truths anymore because you're not doing the rest. Okay? Now, let me explain how this works out. I get clients to think of what are truths that you could tell yourself every day as positive affirmations. You can stick them on the fridge, and every morning you can look at them and say to yourself, I have value, I am lovable, and do that. And you need to come up with some lie or some truths to begin to replace the lies. But you have to understand a very important thing about your brain. Shame and complex trauma are all about the limbic brain. And the limbic brain is the emotional part of your brain. The limbic brain is also the child brain. So the child gets up in the morning and they say, I don't feel like going to school, so I shouldn't have to go to school. So how they feel determines what they think is real. Okay? So what happens with shame-based people is, I don't feel I'm good enough, so I'll treat myself as if I'm not good enough. I treat myself based on how I feel about myself. That is limbic brain thinking. That is complex trauma thinking. And complex trauma has made the limbic brain the most powerful part of your brain. Healing from shame begins by letting your cortex trump your limbic brain. So here's how it works. I wake up, I say I need some time alone just to connect with myself, with my higher power. I'm going to do some meditation, some prayer, go for a walk, and I start to feel guilty. I'm being selfish. And so what does that shame part of your brain said? I'm going to get down on myself. I'm going to say, you're a selfish person. Why would anybody want to love you? You're just a terrible person. And you start beating yourself up because your limbic brain says you should. Treat yourself based on how you're feeling about yourself. But the cortex needs to step in and say, no, I know that I have value. I know I need to take care of myself if I'm going to be any good to other people. And so I'm going to treat myself with respect. I'm not going to feed the guilt. I'm not going to start beating myself up. I am going to choose to treat myself with respect. That's letting the cortex determine how you act. And as you treat yourself with respect, over time, what will happen is you'll start to feel better about yourself. So your cortex will begin to change your limbic to a more positive feeling about self. So my problem with a lot of programs that try to help people with low self-esteem and shame is they say, look in the mirror and tell yourself you love yourself, and give yourself a pedicure and a manicure, and then feel your way to a better you. And I go, you can't feel your way to a better you when your limbic brain is screwed up. You got to start with your cortex. And you got to treat yourself based on the facts that you know to be true about yourself, not based on the feelings that shame has produced towards yourself. And so you're acting your way to a better feeling. You're saying the truth is not what I feel. That's not my reality, though it has been in my past, but that's got me in all kinds of trouble. The truth is I do have value. I do have positive qualities. I am a lovable person. And you begin to treat yourself based on those facts. So that is easier said than done. Because what we're going to look at next week is that in any given day, your shame can get triggered hundreds of times. And what happens when your shame gets triggered? Your limbic brain gets triggered, and you start feeling negatively and have negative feelings about yourself, and everything in you wants to go to beating myself up and being critical. And so you're catching yourself constantly saying, shut up, limbic brain. Cortex, take over. I'm going to follow you. And you have this argument in your head between the two parts of your brain. And as you learn to follow the truth of your cortex, your limbic gradually begins to change. So that's step one in starting to turn this whole shame thing around. So I don't know if I've discouraged you tonight or given you a little bit of hope. I hope it has given you some hope, but also greater self-awareness. Next week, we'll start getting into the tools to heal those hearts. So for the Christian part tonight, I thought what I would do is talk about what are some of the truths that God says about who we are. So let's get the most accurate mirror in the world, God. Let's take a look at that and see what he says about who we are. And let that become the beginning, the framework of how we rebuild an accurate self-identity. And that is, I think, an important piece for most people. Because if I was to say you're a great person, you go, who are you? You don't know me. But if God knows everything about me and every secret I have and even stuff I don't even know about myself, what does he still say about me? So there is somebody I can rely on what they say as being accurate and truthful. And God does actually say quite a bit about us. And so I want to develop it and show it to you. And hopefully you can begin to either memorize it, but make that part of your identity and your understanding. So Romans 8 says this: you have not received a spirit that makes you fearful slaves. Instead, you received God's Spirit when he adopted you as his own children. Now we call him Abba. And that word Abba is just an Aramaic word from that time, which was how a child said daddy. So it was the most intimate child expression, Papa, Daddy. For his Spirit joins with our spirit to affirm that we are God's children. And since we're his children, we're his heirs. What's significant about that is that God doesn't just bring us into a relationship where we sit in the waiting room and wait for an appointment once in a while. If you got the President of the United States, well, we won't talk about him, but the Prime Minister of Canada, and you might have all these people waiting in line to talk to him, but if his kid wants to talk to him, he's got first access. There's a relationship that brings with it intimacy or the potential for intimacy. There's a relationship where God makes himself available, not as a distant father or an angry father, but an available, loving father. And he wants that kind of relationship. He desires for us to feel safe enough with him and close enough to him that we can call him Daddy, or an intimate, trusting expression. And he is so okay with us, he says, I'm going to make you the heirs of everything I have. So you don't just do that for some jerk. You do that for somebody that you are invested in and have faith in. So that's the starting point. Romans 15 says, accept each other just as Christ has accepted you. So what is he saying? Accept each other unconditionally, warts and all, failures. That's how Christ accepted us. What is that saying? He is the only person who has totally unconditionally accepted us for who we are: body, soul, personality, emotional makeup, intellectual makeup. He designed us. He accepts us. We don't have to fear rejection or criticism from him about ourselves. That kind of acceptance doesn't exist in very many places, but it does exist with God. Third one, you are a chosen people. You are royal priests, a holy nation, God's very own special possession. You might have had parents who had different trinkets and toys, but you knew that certain things were special possessions and you didn't mess with those things. Or you knew that other kids could come to your house and play and mom and dad would give them attention, but when they looked at you, there was a twinkle in their eye that wasn't there for other kids. There was an excitement and a pride that you were their kid. And that's what he is saying, is you are not God's trinket that he puts on the back of a shelf to collect dust because it has no value. You are a treasured, special possession that gets very special treatment. A very important truth. Next one, see how very much our Father loves us. Now just in the Greek language that the New Testament was written in, that saying there is this. The love that God has for us isn't like human love. It's like it's from another planet. It's aliens. It is so great. It is so beyond our conditional, limited kind of love. We call it an alien type of love. Do you realize that as a parent, I had 3 children? I couldn't give my attention 24/7 to each child because I have limitations. Do you realize God can give 24/7 attention to every one of his kids? He's never busy because he is capable of that. That's how great he is. So what he is saying is God's love goes to another level that is beyond even our human love. And it is available to all 24/7. It is an acceptance of all. There is an unconditional forgiveness. All of those different pieces come with God's love that you go, this is love from another planet, that he would even call us his children. Dear friends, we are already God's children, but he has not shown us yet what we will be like when Christ appears. But we do know this, that we will be like Jesus, for we will see him as he really is. So what God is saying is, you are a work in progress. You are not yet the finished product. But he loves you so much that he is committed to one day finish what he started in you. And when he finishes what he started, you are going to be beautiful just like Jesus. There's not even going to be one flaw in you anymore. That's how committed he is. That's how deep his love goes. That's how long his commitment towards you goes. Matthew 12, this is a verse that Finding Freedom was based on. You may have heard me talk about it, but it's based on describing the life and ministry of Jesus. It was in response to the religious leaders at that time who basically said, we give our attention to the good living people, the wealthy people, the people with status, the addicts, the prostitutes, we ignore them, they're scum. And they thought God felt that way, and so that's how they said that's why we treat people that way. So Jesus comes along and he says, no, that's not what God is like. And he tells this, he says, look at my servant, Jesus, whom I've chosen. He's my beloved who pleases me. I'll put my spirit upon him. He will proclaim justice to the nations. He will not fight or shout or raise his voice in public. In other words, Jesus wasn't going to go on great political campaigns, start wars. He was going to do stuff in a very quiet, person-to-person way. And here's what he says he's going to do. He will not crush the weakest reed or put out a flickering candle. In that culture, that was full of meaning. The weakest reed or bruised reed was an illustration from shepherding. So if you imagine yourself as a teenager and your dad says, you got to take care of the sheep. Well, sheep are boring. They eat, sleep, and they stand there and look at each other. What are you supposed to do all day taking care of the sheep? So what a shepherd boy would do was he would make himself a little flute. And he would use a reed that was growing in the ditches. And it's much like Manitoba. There's reeds everywhere. There are so many reeds you can't even sell them. They're that plentiful. They have that little value. So a boy would carve out a little flute from a reed, and he'd start to play the flute to kind of put in the hours of the day. But because of saliva, the reed would start to break down, and pretty soon the flute wouldn't work. So you would think, what are you going to do, shepherd boy, with that bruised reed? It's no longer any good. It's used up. It's damaged. The shepherd boy go, I'll throw it away. There's a million other reeds right here. I can cut myself another one. And so the thing is, what does God do with people who were once able to perform, play music with their life, but it become damaged and there's no more music coming out of their soul? Does he say, you're so damaged, you're useless? I got lots of 7 billion people, I'll just pick another one and use them. No, it says God takes the broken, the bruised, the ones that no longer produce music, and he doesn't destroy them, but he makes them have music again. That's how he treats the weakest reed. And that is what Jesus is saying, is I don't take those outcasts and broken people and say, get out of here, you're useless. I rebuild them so that they can perform music with their lives again. The other illustration is a similar one. They didn't have so much what we would have. They didn't have electricity, didn't have many candles. So you would have lamps that had oil in them. And what you would use for a wick was a piece of flax straw. And like, again, Manitoba, flax straw is plentiful everywhere. You can't even sell it. There's so much. So you would make a wick, and what would you do when the wick started burning down and sputtering? You'd throw it out and get another piece. And so the point was this: what does God do with lives that no longer produce light, that are sputtering? The light is dying. The light is gone out. Does he throw it out and say, you're useless? No, he trims that wick. He makes it so it has light again. So what I want you to understand is God takes people who have tons of shame, people who themselves believe they're useless and no longer able to produce anything of value, and he says, I don't believe that lie. Let me show you. I will take your life and I will remake it to be fruitful and productive again. That's the truth God wants us to get. Next one. I love this one. Deuteronomy 32, it says this: he found them, that's Israel, but you can put your name in there, in a desert land, empty land, howling wasteland, nothing's growing, no fruit, no vegetables. It is desert. It is dead. He surrounded this person that he found in this barren desert place, that if they weren't rescued quickly, they would die. And he found them and he surrounded them and he watched over them. And then he says he guarded them as he would guard his own eyes. Do you realize that your eye is the organ that is visible? All your other organs are hidden and protected behind ribs and stuff like that. Your eyes are exposed, but you have 5 different things that are built to protect your eyes. You have eyebrows, you have eyelashes, you have eyelids, you have tears that flow to wash, and you have instant reflexes if somebody comes near your eye. And what is he saying? Your eye is the most protected part of your exposed body. There is all kinds of attention given to making sure it is kept safe. In other words, your eye is treated as very, very valuable. And if you lose your sight, you begin to realize how much you value your sight. So what is God saying? I treat you like the eye. That's how special you are to me. That's how much I am preoccupied with you. And then the next verse says, like an eagle that rouses her chicks and hovers over her young, so God spreads his wings to take them up and carried them safely on his pinions. I've told you this story before. I love it. And it's all about eagles. Eagles, if you ever notice, their nests are always very, very high. And that's because eagles do not have any instinct naturally to fly. So a baby eagle does not have an instinct to flap his wings and begin to fly. How do they learn to fly? Mom pushes them out of the nest. And they go, I have the meanest mom in the world, as they're tumbling to the ground. Guess what God does to help us grow? He says, I think you're ready to fly. Push. You go, God, you're mean. I hate you. And so the first time, what an eagle does with their great big wings, and this is what this verse is saying, the mother sees their baby tumbling along, falling, and it swoops down and spreads itself under the baby eagle, and it lands on the mother's wings. And it swoops it back up to the nest. And what it is saying is, It might look at times that God puts you in danger and doesn't care. Don't believe that. That's a lie. He's like that mother eagle, and he'll swoop down and he will be there for you. But you got to understand what happens next. You get back up to the nest. He goes, okay, out you go again. And then the next time down, the eagle puts his wings out, and all of a sudden the wind catches them, and they go, and they get the idea of flying. And pretty soon they go, I have the smartest mom in the world. I'm so glad she pushed me out of that nest. And that's what God does. Next one. The eternal God is your refuge, and his everlasting arms are under you. In other words, it's the picture of a child that is tired, a child that is afraid. And what does a loving father do? He goes under them with his arms and he carries them. He takes the load that they can't handle, which gives the strength that they cannot provide, and provides the resources by carrying them. Do you ever stop and think about, where do you naturally carry a child? Next to your heart. And what do little children learn? They can learn to hear your heartbeat. And so when God talks about carrying us, he's carrying us close to his heart. Goes on and says this, let the beloved of the Lord rest secure in him. He shields him all day long, and the one the Lord loves rests between his shoulders. Now you can take that two ways. Number one, your head goes right here between his shoulders. He carries you next to his heart. Or he carries you at times on his shoulders when you're too weak to walk. When I was going through my darkest valley, somebody gave me that verse. And that verse became my favorite verse for a long time. That God was carrying me and letting me rest between his shoulders. The verse that helped me the most before that was the next one, Isaiah 41. Don't be afraid, for I am with you. Don't be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will hold you up with my victorious right hand. Times when you are too weak to carry yourself, I do not, God says, judge you and say you're useless. I strengthen you by helping you with my righteous right hand. So those are some of the truths of the Bible. Oh, don't want to go there. Those are some of the truths of the Bible on what God says to you and about how he feels about you. And I hope you can internalize that and make it your own and believe it, not just academically, but let it start to penetrate down deep inside